of everybody showing up today. Brent and I are doing these strengths conversations every Wednesday at 3:30, and we're picking one strength to talk about every week. And this week we're talking about learner. I'm excited that so many of you came and are wanting to learn about it. I think I'll start off with just a few statistics and maybe a little personal background. First of all, I am not a learner. On my list, it's down into the 20s, like out of my 34.
Either.
Same with you, Pam? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm not a learner either, sadly.
Well, it's just low on my list, and I'm excited to talk to other people who do rely on this talent to find out more about it and to find out how we can be supportive. At Augustana, 27% of our everybody at Augustana has learner in their top 5. So that's 27% of everybody. So figuring out how we can support learners on our campus is really valuable to everybody. It's number 3 of all of them on campus. So it's quite popular and quite important for us to figure that out. Brent, do you want to take a minute just to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Brent Olinger. I work in student engagement, and I'm also a strengths certified coach. I do actually have learner in my top 5, along with 4 other strategic thinking skills. So if you have any questions about, just like analytics or anything like that, but I think when I think of learner, like just ideas and learning new things fascinates me. And I think one of the things I always think about in my life is that there are times where I like get myself caught up into just like learning about random things through like a Google search. And then I look and I'm like, oh gosh, that's been an hour. And I just really enjoyed like the process of getting to learn something new. I don't know if that speaks to other learners in the room, but that's something that I always think about that. I think a lot of times in an academic setting, we think about that, how that applies to the classroom, but I think just personally, as you're learning about things that interest you in your life, that's something that I know how learner has shown up for me.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I've just got a few like overarching questions that I think maybe I'll just ask random people. I know Taylor Vaughn, you've been participating with our strengths conversations in the past, so I know you're pretty adept at talking strengths. And anybody else who wants to chime in, feel free. This is an open forum for us. Taylor, for you, my question is really, how do you see learner having that played out in your time at Augustana? And when you were told you are a learner, did that make sense to you?
Yeah, I felt like when I first found out about it, I was like, well, duh, like I have an education, I'm at college, but realizing that it's a focus on like the process of learning, and then that leads to, and then through the years, it's helped me understand like the way that I learn is like a lot slower, just because like the way that I want to like read this certain section of my book and then go through these notes, like it's very like methodical in a way, like my process, so that's one example. But
yeah, I see learners in a lot of times it's about discovering something new. Does that resonate for you? I see Michael shaking his head. Yeah. Is it the excitement of something new in your life?
I just find new things interesting. I think it's why I like math, because they take one idea and they're like, what can we learn from this? And then you get whole courses and subjects like calculus off of what does this mean?
Sure. How do you find that people can support you and support this learner skill of yours or this learner talent? Maybe that's a little too generic to ask or too generic. One of the things that as I'm doing research on it, I kind of have found that perhaps finding resources for new information. So as you were talking about math, is that an opportunity for us to support learners by saying, here are the resources that I use? Or as a professor, knowing that 27% of Augustana has learner in it, you know, if you're going into a class and you're learning, let me make up exercise science, would it be beneficial to have a professor say, here are the journals of exercise science that I use, or here's where I find information about exercise science, or whatever your subject is? Would that be beneficial, or would that be a way of supporting and feeding that learner strength of yours?
I feel like that depends on us having a strong interest in what they're teaching already.
Okay.
So if I was super into that exercise science class, then yeah, it would definitely help, because I could,
So do you feel,
everything I want is right there. But if I
yeah, so,
wasn't,
Yeah, I
I'm
kind
not
of
going to look
agree and
at it.
disagree with that, Michael. I see the learner strength being just the sense for curiosity. So whether maybe it's your passion of yours or not, knowing something that you don't, a quest to find that knowledge, I think is an underlying base that most learners have. So maybe not necessarily exercise science is a forte of yours. However, there is certain characteristics or an outline or certain facts that you could take away and enjoy from that exercise science.
so what I'm
So I
hearing,
find it
go ahead, please, go ahead.
find it ironic that we started talking about exercise science because you previously said, like, do you find joy in like connecting dots and things like that? And so I was previously a government major, and now I've decided to switch to the Master's in Athletic Training program, where you'll get a master or a bachelor's in exercise science. And like one of the main reasons why I decided to continue pursuing athletic training was because like as a learner, I enjoyed seeing like the things I was learning in my anatomy class. I enjoyed seeing how those played out in the athletic training room. Like, oh, you can do evaluations for skeletal structure based on this thing that we learned in anatomy. And it was just like fascinating, mind blown. I can look at a model and then I can see it on an athlete, and it's just like the connection is what made that pursuable, I guess. And like, I don't know, it's sometimes I get distracted in doing my anatomy homework because we'll learn about the respiratory system, right? And so I'll think of like all these diseases or things that can be wrong with the human body. And one of my other strengths is restorative. And so I'll just like go on these manhunts to figure out like, oh, what's the biological response to asthma? Like, and it gets kind of distracting, but like, I guess that's part of the excitement of why I decided to switch my major.
That's excellent. And that's a great point. I'm sorry, I'll just interject one thing and then let you step in. One of the suggestions that the Strengths Finder talks about is finding good partners to work with. And somebody with high learner would really value or find a valuable partnering with people that have high discipline and high focus, because learners can jump from this subject to this subject, just like you described, Michaela, but finding somebody to partner with on even a study group or something that can be like, you have high discipline and you have high focus. You can help me stay rooted as to what I'm trying to accomplish here. I'm sorry, and I interrupted somebody. So who is jumping in?
Yeah.
One of the things that Michaela's comment made me think about, just as like a professional, I know I'm more motivated and more driven to do the work that I already have on my plate when I have the opportunity to like go to a conference, to learn something new, to, you know, take part in something that I find interesting, because I find that learning new things like feeds my motivation to do the things that I already have on my plate, but also incorporating new ideas into how I do my work, so that it feels like even if I'm doing the same thing like the next year, there's some new aspect to it that I'm learning or growing in. I think like for me, it's like a need for like individual and personal growth. And I think that's kind of what you were speaking to a little bit from what I heard.
I even see it in like my personal life a little bit, like not even necessarily related to academics, but like the personal growth that you described. Like I feel compelled to read. I enjoy self-help books that are like interesting and like where I want to go, I guess, like driven towards like spiritual growth or anything like that. And I feel compelled to continue to get more and more books that help me grow personally. And so it's just like, it's not my number one strength, but sometimes it feels like it.
I'm off on this thought, and I'll throw this out to all of you. This thought of learner comes across as very much me-centered. It's about me learning. It's about me doing this. How important is it for you to share what you've learned with others?
You have no idea how many eye rolls I've gotten from my parents after finding something. I want to go upstairs and tell them about it.
Okay, so for you, it's really important, I'm hearing. Is that the same? Maybe Jamie,
My dad mentioned.
No, go Michaela.
Well, my dad said something last night about like his neck hurting. And like, I was like, we were taking a walk. And it's like, he just mentioned something about, oh, I sleep wrong on my neck or something. And I went off on this tangent about how like these bones in your neck are connected to your ribs and this and this. And I just keep talking about like the skeletal structure to him. And I'm like, you should really go to a chiropractor. And it happens at the weirdest points. And my parents are like, wow, maybe you should be a doctor or a chiropractor. And it's really just, I guess, that manifestation of wanting to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that because when I find something like super interesting, it's specific for me, it has to relate to, or it mainly relates to like animals or anatomy or like some sort of that. So I always love sharing my information. So if I find like a really cool bird or a dog and I'm like, here's its history practically. And I just, yeah. So it gets annoying from most people, but I still love doing it.
I also think there's two parts to this as well. So the first off, the self-centered part, what we've all just discussed now, but also the reverse side of it, where learner in essence is attempting to understand or to learn something from someone else. So I also say the second half of this is a learner tries to see from a different perspective and learn something from someone else. So I think it's also a crucial role of the learner to accept and learn something from someone else as well.
So I'm going to share a perspective from a non-learner, because part of the reason we do these strengths finders is to figure out how we work together with people that have different strengths than we do. 3 out of my top 5 are in the relationship building category. I am not strategic. So I know that you people are out there. I know that when I need to have something work or need somebody to figure something out, that the learners are out there ready to figure it out. But I get frustrated when a learner tries to tell me how to do it, why you have to do it this way. It's like, stop. I can't take in that information. I am way on the outside of that. I mean, I respect the heck out of it. I just don't have that. So that is one thing for you learners to know about a non-learner, is that can be frustrating.
I couldn't agree more, Pam. And we're the two non-learners in the group. So they're all probably looking at us like, what? You don't want to learn about this? And I'm like, no, I don't need to learn about it. I need to know that you know about it. and I'm ready to
Exactly.
implement what you're telling me. And let's just, Cooper's the guy. He was sent off on the mission to figure it out. He's got it figured out. I'm just going to let him go from here, and I'll do what I do well.
Yeah, so we rely on the learners tremendously.
I agree.
So this is great to know. I work with Pam every day on things. So we had a thing come up yesterday. We were trying to figure it out. So I YouTubed it and I sent her a couple videos. Maybe I should have just did it.
Like, no.
Yep.
I mean,
We're learning.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
learners are learning.
Learners are learning always.
The learners are learning. I mean, I think that's one of the things that as a administrator and as faculty and as people, even yourselves as you're, doing, not everybody has the same learning style, right? How many of you have figured out the learning style that works best for you?
Freezing up a little bit.
I'm sorry, say that again. I'm glitching up. Is that what you
You're
said?
freezing up a little bit. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're catching in and out. Yeah.
Undoubtedly, it's because my children are probably Fortniting like crazy downstairs and using all of my bandwidth. It's that 3:30 in the afternoon time frame, and games have been turned on. My question is, those of you that have learners, have you figured out a specific learning style that's worked for you? Like Teresa is like, I need to find things on the internet. Other people might be like, I got to get to the library because I prefer it out of a book, or I prefer it somewhere else. Does anybody have like a unique style or something that's
Definitely for me, it's it's definitely like watching a video or watching somebody else do it versus opening up a book and reading about it. I'm more of like show me hands-on type of a learner.
okay?
I definitely agree with that. I have to be out and I guess be doing the thing I need to learn to be able to learn it. I'm very visual and hands-on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I even had this, like when I went into my anatomy class, is like I enjoyed labs a lot more just because you're more hands-on and you can visualize things and you can see things. And like I struggled in the sections where you look at things through microscopes just because it's like it's not really tangible. You can't really touch it, I guess, as like you can a skeleton or something like that. And so if I can't like see it and touch it, I guess I try to use like a video, and then like if I have to use a book, I try to break it down and get like the main points. I do a lot of annotating in my readings, and so it's all about like breaking down things for me and getting like the main idea.
Interesting.
I know for me, mine shows up in like conferences and also the idea that I'm like always going to be in school. I'm currently not in school, but getting my graduate degree, I'm like, I'll probably get my PhD one day. Like, and it's a thought in my head that I'm like, I know I'm going to eventually do it. It's just a matter of when, just because I love going to class. Like it's, to me, like that process, especially if classes are interactive, discussion based, I think that's kind of my learning style.
Brent, do you also have some skills in the top 5 in the relationship category? Really? That surprises me.
No, I think it's my 9th strength is the first relationship building skill.
Callie,
I just think it's unique that you brought up like discussion-based courses. Go ahead.
No, please continue.
Sorry. Like discussion-based classes, just because so I didn't go to a traditional high school where you sit and like listen to a teacher lecture, and so for me, it's always been about like, that's part of the reason why I chose Augie, I guess, also is like, it's interactive in your classes. And oftentimes like my government courses were very discussion based, and you talk about like why a law or why something's unconstitutional versus constitutional, yada, 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 and you discuss amongst each other. And I found that fascinating because it was like connecting with others, which I only have one of my top 5 in relationship, but like sitting like in my anatomy lecture gets hard because I feel like I'm just being given information. I'm not able as a learner to apply that information or like see that information.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like kind of speaking to the relationship part, like the classroom or places where you learn seem like a natural place to build relationships when you're all trying to like surround yourself in a specific topic or learning around something. Like that seems more natural to me than me just randomly going up to someone and being like, hey, what's up?
You know, that is a key tenet of just StrengthsFinder in general, is that it's because you don't have a relationship building strength in your top 10 even, doesn't mean that you're not good at building relationships. It just means you go about it through a different style and you go about it differently. Callie, you've been really quiet. I'm going to call on you. You're going to have to jump in and talk about your learner here.
Yes. So, well, I'm actually it's my number 14. So I was mostly wanting to hear about others too, because I was thinking about this in a way that when I'm working with students and advising students and things, knowing that everyone is learning in a different way, and how can I be a better advisor and help them get through learning new things as they're joining organizations or we're doing things with our leaders and things. So that's what I was hoping to hear about, is just different ways that learners learn, so I can do a better job of my job.
That's awesome. Taylor, you either have a car that goes by on a regular basis, it takes your mic, so I'm going to call on you to chime in here and give us some feedback on what you're hearing and make some comments.
Okay. Yeah, I agree a lot with everything that's been said. As far as learning goes, in the academic setting, I think for me, just like, I find myself, sometimes I ask a question that I think is totally relevant, and the professor's like, that's beyond the scope. And I'm like, can you still tell me quick, like a synopsis of the answer? So that's something I find myself doing. But it's interesting that you bring up the relationship piece, because for me, I also see a learner a lot, also in terms of like wanting to get to know people better, and not necessarily like study groups, but like why are you the way that you are, and like what's your background, and how do you, like, it's more, you know what I mean? It's more like, what is that person like, is another way that I see it play out a lot.
I think too, it can play out like how you navigate spaces and how you navigate. So if you go on a study abroad trip, learners are observing all of these things too, about what culture is like, how they're supposed to interact with others, and kind of picking up some of those things too.
Interesting. You know, a question I'm gonna throw out here, and maybe there isn't, but do you think there's a negative to being a learner, or to having learner in like hyperdrive? You know, what would be a negative aspect of this?
Tangents. Like managing my time when I'm supposed to be working on Google, and then I realize I've used all my time on this Google search instead of the assignment I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, like Brent said, we're suckers for clickbait and big titles, you know. Did you know this? You know, stuff like that.
You guys are distracted by shiny
Yeah,
things.
exactly. Ooh, squirrel.
Especially with our friends who think we ask too many questions, or, you know, need too much information. Like, no, I don't. I just need to know.
You know, learners ask questions that non-learners don't think of.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys ask questions that, oh, I guess I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, I think there's an element of being very interested in the details that learners have and thinking about those things and asking those questions where those things don't enter my brain necessarily.
I find that a lot with my restorative is like, restorative is a lot of like problem solving or even like foreseeing problems in the future. So like, if I do this, what could happen? And like, I had an internship where I was like, it was a good internship and I was like deathly afraid of doing something wrong. And so like, I would always ask questions about like everything. So they would tell me, oh, I want you to take notes at this meeting. And I would ask questions like, who do you want me to email it to? What program do you want me to do it in? Like, what's the format? Do you want me to take time notes? Like, just all the details. And it's sometimes overwhelming, like Pam said, for non-learners, because it's just some things, I learned some things you can infer, or just do, and someone will have no problem with it. So.
I certainly think that's an important part of learning to work with others in general, is figuring out what are your colleagues and coworkers and fellow students need from your learner. You know, like Pam was describing with Teresa, is, you know, what do you need? I need learners to go and learn this information and then share it with me. I don't need to be told what they're going to say in advance. Just get it, you know, get to this point.
And I really like this this Strengths Finder when it comes to working in teams. So the last 2 years at our cabinet retreat, we have done an in-depth examination of all of the members of the cabinet, what their strengths are, and even taking it a step further about how different strengths work better with other types of strengths. So, and it was so helpful to me last year. You know, I'll talk about Shannon on our cabinet. He's very strategic. I am not strategic. And there was disconnect when we would talk to each other. This Strengths Quest really helped me figure out how to interact with Shannon so that he understands me and I can understand him better. And it helped tremendously. So I really believe in the value of these strengths and how it can help to build teams.
That brings up a question. How long have we, as Augustana, implemented these Clifton strengths?
I just sent some trivia out to the Welcome Week team, Cooper. So I'm not going to give you the answers. I'll give you a hint. It's longer than 10 years.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would not have guessed that at all.
I would not have guessed that
That's
either.
impressive.
Yeah, longer than 10. We've been doing it with every student body, like with every incoming class for the last 7.
I see. Would you ever do it like Taylor and have them take it again at the end of their senior year to see how it changes or anything like that? Or the time you took at the beginning of your freshman year, them are the strengths that you're going to be assigned the next 4 years?
I think you should do that for us.
Yeah.
If you want to initiate it this year.
I always answer that question with how hard have you worked on them the first time? You know, strengths are great, but if you're not willing to invest in them, then it's just trivia, and you might as well go to online and figure out what Hogwarts house you belong to.
Yeah.
But if you're going to work on them, and you're going to try and figure out how can I use my learner and how can I enhance what learner is, then I think there's a lot of value in figuring out if they've changed. I can tell you the Gallup research says that they don't change much, and their test to retest doesn't show a lot of change.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think they say most of your strengths stay within like your top 12.
Yeah.
So
See, yeah.
even if your number one becomes your sixth, that's
Still in the
likely what you're
ballpark.
seeing as a change.
So even from like, I guess like over your lifetime being a young age to workforce age, like you wouldn't see it change much at all, even?
That's not what the research is showing, that it changes a lot. You know, I look at it like this: your curiosity of being a learner and your constant curiosity probably fostered itself when you were young, and you're just getting better at it, and you will probably continue to have this curiosity. It might change focus, and it might change, you know, right now you're into anatomy and exercise science. Who knows what that'll foster and become 5 years from now? It may manifest itself very differently, but that curiosity of being a learner will probably stick with you.
I think it's the type of thing that just becomes more apparent. It just multiplies.
That's, I mean,
You
that's
see it,
that's the strategy.
Littler stages younger.
That's absolutely
Yeah.
the strategy
You
and
just kind of,
philosophy.
when you get a
is
little
you-
older, you just commit. It's like, yeah, this is me.
yeah, you grow more in that, you know, as a woo, you know, I certainly grow more in my woo on a regular basis. As an includer, I lean into that. As I get older, I'm like, I'm good at it, and I want to be good at it, and I want to be known as the guy who's good at it. So I'll lean into it even more and figure out how to be better at it.
Okay, Jeff, so we have 2 out of 5.
Yeah. Let's see: strategic, connectedness, relator, includer, and woo.
My goodness. Yeah, definitely. This sums it up. What you are, you know, you just make sure everyone's together for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Brent, you got anything you want to say to wrap us up, or should we just wrap it up and then move on to our intro of next week?
I think just for like students, as you're growing in your learner, and everyone, just being aware of, like, we kind of touched on how you learn, what process you need to learn, and just kind of honing that skill even more, and pairing that with all the interests that you have, whether that's inside or outside the classroom.
Well said. Thank you.
And like Michael said, sharing that learning with others is, you know, a good thing. Just know that they may have to take it in smaller doses.
Yeah. Well, I'm so appreciative that you came and are connecting to your strengths. And those of you that don't have Learner, that are just coming to learn more about Strengths Finder and how to work with people that have Learner, we'll be back next week at 3:30. I'll be sending out the link to that in email again, but it'll next week we're going to be talking about woo. So I imagine 400 people will probably show up because they all want to talk about themselves a little bit and get to know each other. But we'll be talking about woo next Wednesday at 3:30.
This has been
If you'd
awesome,
like-
Jeff and Brent. Thank you very much.
And
Very
if you'd
good.
like to talk more in depth about like your individual strengths, Jeff and I offer to do like sit down or Zoom sessions now because we can't sit down in person. But if you want to talk more in depth for, you know, a half hour, an hour and a half to kind of talk through goal settings with your strengths and, you know, in the time that you're in now, especially working from home or doing classes from home, feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Cooper, you said you had all this
Thank
extra
you.
time on your hands, so we'll be expecting an email from you soon.
Oh, fantastic.
All right.
We'll get her done.
I like it. Bye, everybody. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.